The palace of Zerathia stretched across the cliffs like a jewel of the stars. Its towers shimmered in pale blue light, casting long reflections on the crystal lakes below. Alien birds with glowing feathers glided through the air, singing in strange but melodic tones. Inside the palace, servants floated silently along hallways of polished metal, and guards in silver armor watched every corner. But in one of the highest chambers, a storm was brewing. Not in the sky, but in the heart of the youngest princess. Princess Lyria stomped across the marble floor, her long, violet hair bouncing with each step. Her eyes, the color of molten gold, glared at the figure seated on the throne. Her mother, Queen Elira, looked serene as always, her hands resting lightly on the armrests. Her eyes, the deep blue of the Zyrathian oceans, did not waver as Lyria approached. "Mom!" Lyria shouted, her voice echoing through the high chamber. "Why do I have to wed a human?" The words hung in the air. The chamber was silent except for the faint hum of the palace's life support systems. The queen tilted her head slightly and regarded her daughter calmly. "You ask this question as if it is a punishment," Queen Elira said softly. Her voice carried authority but also patience, like the quiet flow of a river. "It is a punishment," Lyria snapped. "Humans are weak, primitive. They do not belong among us. I cannot marry a human. I refuse." The queen raised one delicate hand, motioning for Lyria to calm herself. "Lyria, humans are not what you think. They are different. Yes, they are not like us. They are not tall or fast or powerful like many of the species you know. But they are clever, adaptable, and resilient. Their minds and hearts are strong in ways that even we have not fully understood." Lyria laughed bitterly, though it was more a sharp sound than amusement. "Resilient? Clever? They cannot even survive in space without machines. They are fragile and silly. Why would I be forced to bind my life to one of them?" Queen Elira leaned forward slightly, her hands clasped. "Because the galaxy is changing, Lyria. Many species underestimate humans. They look down on them, thinking them weak. But humans have done things no one else could. They have solved problems other species could not, and they have survived in conditions that would break most civilizations. You will see that your human ambassador is no ordinary being." Lyria threw her hands in the air, frustration boiling over. "I do not care. I do not want to see him. I do not want to marry him. Why must the choice be taken from me? Why? Her voice cracked as tears began to form. She spun around, storming toward the window, looking out at the endless sky. "Why must this be my life?" The queen stood and glided toward her daughter. Her movements were smooth, almost floating, as if she were part of the air itself. "Because you are a princess, and your actions affect not only our family, but our planet. This marriage is not for you alone. It is for Zyrathia, for the people who rely on us. And sometimes, my child, what is right is not always what feels easy." Lyria turned sharply, her golden eyes blazing. "I am tired of being right for everyone else. I am tired of being told to accept things I do not understand. I do not want a human. I do not want him." The queen's face softened, though her resolve did not falter. "I understand your fear. You fear the unknown. But humans are not only the unknown. They are a challenge, and they are a spark. You may yet discover something extraordinary, Lyria. Sometimes the stars bring unexpected gifts, and it is our task to recognize them." Lyria clenched her fists, the weight of duty pressing on her young shoulders. She wanted to run, to hide from this fate, but she could not escape the reality. Somewhere beyond the palace, a human ship was approaching. Captain Jason, the ambassador sent by Earth, would arrive soon, and she would have to meet him. Meanwhile, in the cold expanse of space, the human ship Endeavor moved steadily towards Zerathia. Captain Jason stood on the bridge, his hands resting lightly on the rail, looking at the alien world below. From the moment he received the assignment, he had known this mission would not be simple. Humans were known across the galaxy as unusual, but this planet was different. Its people were proud, clever, and wary of outsiders. Jason had to prove that humans could be trusted, that they could offer more than strength. They could offer ingenuity, courage, and loyalty. He glanced at his crew. "Prepare for orbit entry," he said calmly. "Remember, we are not just visitors. We are diplomats. But if this goes wrong, we are also problem solvers. Humans always find a way." The crew nodded, and the ship adjusted its trajectory, entering the atmosphere of Zerathia. Outside the viewport, the alien landscape unfolded, towering, crystal structures, glowing forests, and floating rivers that shimmered with light. Jason allowed himself a small smile. This is what humans do best, he thought. We go where others fear, we adapt, and we endure. Back in the palace, Lyria sat alone in her private chambers. She had thrown herself onto the soft violet cushions of her lounge, trying to calm her racing thoughts. But her mind would not settle. Humans were strange. She had heard tales, stories told in hushed tones by the older nobles, of humans who could survive freezing planets, navigate deadly asteroid fields, and outsmart powerful alien empires. And yet, she could not reconcile these stories with the image of someone she would be forced to marry. A knock at the door pulled her from her thoughts. "Enter," she called, her voice still sharp. The door slid open, and her personal attendant, a small creature with silver feathers and quick darting eyes, stepped in. "Princess," it said softly, "your mother has requested that you prepare for the ambassador's arrival. Captain Jason will land within the hour." Lyria groaned and buried her face in her hands. "I do not care about preparing. I do not care about him at all." The attendant gave a small, sympathetic nod. "I understand, Princess, but humans are different. Perhaps he will surprise you." Lyria lifted her head sharply. "Different? That is what they all say. I do not want to be surprised. I want to live my life as I choose." The attendant hesitated, then bowed. "Very well, Princess. But sometimes, the things we resist the most teach us the greatest lessons." Lyria glared at the creature but said nothing. She turned to the window again, watching the alien sky. Ships glided through the air like silver fish in a luminous sea, carrying goods, messages, and sometimes spies. Soon one of those ships would carry a human, and she would have to meet him. The time passed slowly. The sun of Zerathia dipped below the horizon, casting the crystal towers in shades of orange and red. Lyria's heart beat faster with each passing moment. She did not understand why she felt nervous. Humans were strange. Humans were weak. And yet, there was something about the thought of meeting this human that made her pulse quicken. At last, a soft vibration echoed through the palace floors. The landing pads outside shimmered with energy as Jason's ship descended. Guards moved quickly, opening the gates to welcome, or perhaps to judge, the human ambassador. Lyria's mother, Queen Elira, appeared behind her. "He is here," she said quietly. "Do not forget, Lyria, that humans are capable of more than you can imagine. Observe, learn, and keep your mind open." Lyria stood, brushing her hands over her gown. She felt a mix of anger, fear, and curiosity. "I will see him," she said, her voice barely more than a whisper. "But that does not mean I will like him." The doors of the chamber opened, and Jason stepped inside. He was taller than she, expected, with broad shoulders and an easy confidence. His eyes were calm, observing everything with quiet intelligence. He bowed slightly, a human gesture that seemed both humble and respectful. "Princess Lyria," he said, his voice deep but gentle. "It is an honor to meet you." Lyria opened her mouth, ready to speak, but no words came. He was human, and yet there was something about him that made her pause. Perhaps it was the calm in his eyes, or the way he seemed to notice the smallest details in the room. Perhaps it was something she could not yet name. Queen Elira watched the exchange, silently, a small smile playing on her lips. She had seen this reaction before in other humans, and she knew that Lyria's life was about to change in ways the princess could never have imagined. Lyria finally found her voice. though it trembled slightly. You are human. Jason nodded, a small smile appearing on his face. I am. And I am here to help, to learn, and perhaps to show you that humans are not what the galaxy expects. Lyria's eyes narrowed. We shall see about that. The stage was set. A human had entered her life. And for the first time, Lyria felt that the world she had known, the palace, her family, her expectations, was about to shift in ways she could never have imagined. The morning sun of Zerathia spilled golden light across the palace, bouncing off the crystal towers and filling every corridor with soft radiance. Princess Lyria woke to the sounds of servants preparing for the day, their delicate wings fluttering, as they moved swiftly and silently. The events of the previous evening, the arrival of the human ambassador, still weighed heavily on her mind. She could not forget his calm, confident demeanor. Something about him irritated her, but she could not put her thoughts in order. You are awake early, princess, said her attendant, the silver-feathered creature that had advised her the night before. Shall we prepare for your first meeting with Captain Jason? Lyria tossed back the covers, her golden eyes sharp. I do not want a meeting. I do not want to see him. I do not want anything to do with humans. The attendant cocked its small head, feathers shimmering in the morning light. I understand, princess, but humans are unusual. Perhaps seeing him will teach you something. Perhaps you will understand why your mother insisted on this union. Lyria made a noise of frustration, but did not reply. She dressed quickly in a flowing gown of deep violet, the color of the twilight crystal lakes. The gown shimmered as she moved, catching the light in ways that made her look both regal and fierce. She had to admit, even to herself, that she wanted to impress this human even if she would never admit it. When she arrived in the grand hall, the human ambassador was already there. Captain Jason stood at the center, observing the palace with a calm, steady gaze. His uniform was simple compared to the ornate armor of the Zerathian guards, but it fit him well. He carried himself with quiet authority, and the golden light from the crystal windows highlighted the sharp, thoughtful lines of his face. Princess Lyria, he said again, bowing slightly. It is a pleasure to meet you in person. Lyria crossed her arms, her eyes narrowing. You are human, she said flatly. I know. I saw you yesterday. You are tall, and you breathe oxygen. That is all I have noticed so far. Jason smiled faintly. Tall and breathing oxygen are good observations, but there is more to humans than that. We think, adapt, and solve problems in ways that others often underestimate. I hope you will allow me to demonstrate. The princess huffed in annoyance. I do not need any demonstrations. I do not trust humans, and I do not like them. Jason nodded. I understand. Trust is earned. Perhaps we should begin with something simple. A small test of skill, if you will. Not to prove anything to me, but to show you that humans are different. Lyria's curiosity pricked at her, despite her anger. A test? You dare suggest a test? Against me? Jason chuckled. Not against you. Together. Consider it. A way to see how we might work as allies. Lyria tilted her head, unsure whether to refuse or accept. Her pride and her mother's warning collided in her mind. Finally, she said, Very well. I will see this test of yours, but do not think it will impress me. Jason gestured toward a small hover vehicle in the corner of the hall. It was an elegant craft, meant for quick palace transport, but its energy core had malfunctioned overnight. The Zerathian engineers had tried to repair it, but it refused to start. This vehicle, Jason said, walking toward it, is a simple machine for your people, I'm sure. But it has failed. Let us see if we can fix it together. Lyria approached reluctantly, her hands brushing against the smooth metal. She had watched the palace engineers work for years and knew every nuance of their machines. She did not understand why she should help a human. Still, she was intrigued. Jason opened a panel revealing a complex array of circuits and energy conduits. See, he said, the problem is not with the energy source, It is the alignment of the conduits. Humans can think outside of routine, patterns. We see things differently. Allow me to demonstrate. Within minutes, Jason traced wires and adjusted conduits, using tools the engineers had overlooked. The machine began to hum, its engines flickering to life. The guards gasped. The attendants whispered among themselves. Lyria's jaw tightened. She could not believe what she was seeing. A human, in minutes, repairing a device that her engineers had struggled with for hours. It works, Jason said simply, stepping back. Humans often solve problems that others consider impossible. Lyria's pride burned. She wanted to argue, to say it was luck, or coincidence, or some minor trick. But she could not deny the truth. The machine was working. Her eyes flickered between the vehicle and the human standing calmly beside it. Humans, she muttered, almost to herself. They are clever. Jason smiled faintly as if hearing her words. Thank you. Perhaps we can move to something more challenging next. Humans thrive when problems are complicated. Lyria's mind whirled. She did not want to admit that she was impressed, but a small, reluctant curiosity had taken root. She wanted to understand him. How could a human adapt so quickly, think so clearly, and remain calm in the midst of uncertainty? For the next hour, they moved through various challenges in the palace. Jason demonstrated human strategies for organizing the palace staff efficiently. He suggested modifications to the energy conduits that improved the palace's defensive systems. Lyria found herself watching him closely, noticing not only his skill, but his calm, respectful manner. Boast did not demand obedience, and yet he inspired trust. Even the palace guards, who had been skeptical, began to nod quietly. They whispered to one another about the human's abilities. Lyria's stomach twisted with conflicting emotions, frustration, curiosity, and a strange admiration she refused to name. During a short break, she retreated to a balcony overlooking the palace gardens. The glowing trees swayed in the morning breeze, and alien birds sang in the distance. Jason followed, walking with quiet steps. You are thinking, he said gently, about how humans do things differently. Lyria glared at him. I am not thinking about humans. I am thinking about how I do not trust humans, that is all. Jason chuckled softly. It is natural to be cautious. We are different after all. But sometimes the things we fear most are the very things that teach us the most. Lyria's golden eyes studied him. And you think I can learn from a human? I know you can, he said simply. Humans have faced challenges that would break most other species. They endure. They adapt. They find solutions in impossible situations, and sometimes they inspire those around them to do the same. Lyria wanted to look away, to reject his words, but she could not. There was a strange truth in them. A seed of curiosity began to grow inside her, an urge to see what this human could do, to test the limits of his cleverness, and perhaps to test herself as well. Their conversation was interrupted by a sudden alarm. The palace energy fields had detected unauthorized movement near the outer gates. Lyria tensed. What is it? She demanded. Jason's eyes narrowed, scanning the distant sensors. Some intruders. Likely scouts, but they will not breach the palace. Let us see if humans and Zerathians can work together in real danger. Lyria's heart raced. This was her chance to see the human in action beyond simple demonstrations. She followed him through the corridors, and together they coordinated the palace defenses. Jason combined his knowledge of human tactics with Lyria's intimate knowledge of the palace, setting traps and rerouting energy flows. The intruders, small but dangerous creatures from a nearby rogue planet, were swiftly contained. The palace defenses worked flawlessly, and the creatures were neutralized without serious damage. Guards and attendants looked on in awe, their respect for the human ambassador growing by the minute. Lyria felt a strange mix of emotions: relief that the palace was safe, frustration at her own fascination with the human, and a growing admiration she refused to acknowledge. After the crisis passed, Jason turned to her. You see, he said quietly, humans are more than what others assume. and together we can accomplish things neither could do alone." Lyria looked at him, her golden eyes reflecting the morning light. She did not respond immediately. Her pride was wounded, but her curiosity was awake. Slowly, she nodded, almost imperceptibly. "Perhaps humans are not as simple as I thought." Jason smiled, not triumphantly, but kindly. "Perhaps, and perhaps in time, you will see more." Lyria watched him walk away, his calm confidence leaving a lasting impression. She did not yet understand the depth of her fascination, nor did she admit that part of her mind wondered what it would be like to know this human better. But one thing was certain. The events of this day had shifted something inside her. The human ambassador was not weak. He was clever, adaptable, and brave, and he had entered her world in a way no one else had ever done. As the sun climbed higher, casting golden light across the palace, Lyria made a silent promise to herself. She would not allow fear or pride to dictate her actions entirely. She would watch this human closely. She would test him, and perhaps she would learn from him in ways she could not yet imagine. For the first time, she realized that humans might not only be worthy allies, they might also be worthy of respect, and perhaps one day more than respect. The days after Captain Jason's arrival passed quickly, yet each one felt heavier for Princess Lyria. She could not shake the strange mixture of frustration and curiosity that had taken root in her heart. Jason was human, yes, and he had proven clever beyond what anyone expected. But that cleverness made Lyria's pride flare. She refused to admit it, yet she found herself watching him more closely than anyone else. The palace of Zerathia, while beautiful, was also a maze of politics, hidden passages and long-held rivalries. Not all of the nobles welcomed the presence of a human ambassador. Some whispered behind the queen's back, claiming that no human could ever be trusted with Zerathia's secrets. Others envied Lyria for her position and sought to manipulate her anger and distrust. One morning, the palace bells rang urgently. Lyria, still in her violet gown, rushed to the grand hall, where Jason was already coordinating the palace staff. "What is it?" she demanded, her golden eyes sharp with impatience. Jason pointed toward the outer gates. "There's been sabotage. Someone has tampered with the palace defense system. It's minor, for now, but it could have caused serious harm if we didn't notice in time." Lyria's stomach tightened. "Sabotage? Who would—" Jason cut her off gently. "We don't know yet, but it's an opportunity. Let's see if humans and Zyrathians can work together to fix it before it becomes a real threat." Lyria clenched her fists but followed him. She could not let him solve this alone. Pride and curiosity both demanded she act. Together they moved through the palace corridors, Lyria pointing out weak spots and secret access points only a princess would know. Jason listened carefully, asking questions and suggesting solutions that combined human ingenuity with Zerathian technology. By mid-morning, the sabotage was identified. A small group of palace engineers, influenced by jealous nobles, had attempted to disable the energy shields in certain sectors. Jason calmly explained a way to reroute power, restoring the shields and reinforcing weak points. Lyria watched him work, amazed at his calm precision. "Humans think differently," she admitted quietly to herself. "They see what others miss." Jason overheard her but smiled without comment. "It's true. Sometimes being an outsider helps you notice details others overlook." Lyria glared at him, embarrassed by her own acknowledgement. "Do not think I am impressed," she said sharply. Jason merely nodded, letting her pride remain intact. That was one of the many things that made him unusual. He did not compete unnecessarily, he did not boast, yet he commanded respect through his actions. The incident with the sabotage brought whispers among the nobles. Some grudgingly acknowledged Jason's skill, others became more cautious in their schemes. Lyria noticed the subtle shift and felt a sense of satisfaction. Humans, she realized, could be as powerful as any Zerathian, not through raw strength but through cleverness, courage, and calmness under pressure. Later that day, Lyria was summoned to a private chamber for training exercises. The queen insisted that she practice defensive maneuvers and problem-solving drills, skills that were essential for a princess who might one day lead her people. Jason was invited to participate as well. "Do not hold back," Lyria said, though her tone was defensive. "I will show you that humans are limited." Jason raised an eyebrow, smiling faintly. "I look forward to seeing your skills, princess." The training began with simple tasks: navigation of obstacle courses, coordination of energy shields, and strategic positioning. Lyria excelled in every challenge. Her speed, intelligence, and familiarity with the palace gave her an edge. Jason, however, adapted quickly, finding solutions that Lyria had not considered. He combined human logic with Xirathian systems, creating shortcuts and strategies that surprised even her. Lyria felt a strange frustration mixed with admiration. How could someone so different understand the palace so quickly? Her pride flared, and she pushed herself harder, determined to show that Xirathians were superior. Yet, with each task, she realized that humans were not only capable, they were exceptional in unexpected ways. After hours of drills, Lyria paused, breathing heavily. "Fine," she admitted quietly. "You are clever, but it is just luck." Jason shook his head. "No, princess, it is not luck. It is observation, adaptation, and persistence. Humans do not give up easily. We face challenges and find solutions. It is what we do." Lyria looked at him, her golden eyes searching. She wanted to argue, to deny him, but a part of her could not. She had seen it with her own eyes. Humans think differently, act boldly, and endure when others fail. That evening, the palace was quiet. Lyria wandered the corridors alone, thinking. Her pride wrestled with her curiosity. She did not want to admit it, but she wanted to understand Jason, to see what made him so unusual. A sudden alarm broke the silence. Lyria rushed to the control room and found Jason already there, analyzing the palace sensors. "Another intrusion?" she asked. Jason nodded. "Yes, scouts from a neighboring system. They may be testing our defenses. We need to act quickly." Lyria's heart raced. This was no longer a drill. She followed Jason's instructions, using her knowledge of hidden corridors and secret access points. Together, they set traps, reinforced energy barriers, and coordinated the palace staff. The intruders, clever but unprepared for combined human and Xirathian strategies, were quickly captured. Lyria felt a rush of exhilaration. She had fought beside a human, and together they had succeeded. Her admiration for Jason grew, though she would not admit it even to herself. After the incident, the queen entered the control room. "Excellent work, both of you," she said. "Humans are often underestimated. You have seen today why your mother believes in this alliance." Lyria felt a twinge of guilt. She had resisted the idea of a human ambassador, yet here he had proven himself not only capable but indispensable. That night, Lyria could not sleep. She walked the palace gardens, thinking. The stars above Xirathiya glimmered like scattered jewels, and the alien trees swayed softly in the night breeze. She remembered Jason's words from the morning. Humans endure, adapt, and inspire. A small voice inside her admitted a truth she had long resisted. Humans were not primitive. They were clever, brave, and resourceful. And somehow, this human, Jason, had entered her life and challenged everything she thought she knew. The next morning brought another challenge. A group of nobles, angry at Jason's growing influence, attempted to set a trap for him during a formal ceremony. Lyria noticed their subtle movements, the way they tried to guide him toward a malfunctioning energy panel. Without thinking, she intercepted him. "Wait," she said sharply, grabbing his arm. "They are trying to trap you. Step back." Jason looked at her, surprised. "Thank you, princess. I did not notice them." Lyria felt a strange warmth at his gratitude. She had acted instinctively without thinking of pride or fear. It was a moment of clarity. Humans were clever, yes, but humans inspired action, courage, and quick thinking in others. Together, they exposed the noble's scheme. The Queen praised Lyria for her keen observation and swift action. Jason nodded in approval, a silent acknowledgement of her growing skill. For the first time, Lyria saw herself differently. She was not only a princess, she could be a leader, capable of courage, intelligence, and collaboration. And Jason, the human who had once seemed strange and weak, had become a catalyst for her growth. The days turned into weeks. Lyria and Jason spent more time together, learning from each other. He taught her human problem-solving techniques, and she shared the secrets of the palace. They argued, debated, and sometimes laughed. Through every challenge, Lyria realized that humans were not only survivors, they were extraordinary. One evening, as the twin moons of Zerathia rose in the sky, Lyria stood on her balcony watching Jason in the gardens below. He moved among the palace staff, quietly instructing, observing, and guiding. She could not deny the admiration she felt. He was clever, patient, brave, and kind. He was human, and unlike anyone she had ever known. A small, reluctant thought entered her mind. Perhaps her mother had been right. Perhaps humans were not to be dismissed. Perhaps Jason was someone worth knowing, not only as an ally, but as something more. Lyria shook her head, trying to banish the thought. She would not admit it. She would not allow herself to be swayed, but deep inside she knew that everything was changing. The palace, the humans, and even her own heart were moving in ways she could not control. And for the first time she began to wonder, not with fear, but with curiosity, what it might mean to trust a human, and what it might mean to see them, not as weak or strange, but as something truly remarkable. The trials were far from over. The palace had enemies, and the galaxy was full of dangers. But Lyria had learned one important truth. With humans by her side, she could face challenges she had never imagined. And perhaps, just perhaps, humans could teach even a princess that courage and cleverness are not measured by strength alone. The palace of Zerathia glowed softly in the early morning light, but the calm was deceptive. Sensors had detected an approaching fleet from the neighboring empire of Kalthor, a ruthless civilization that had long resented Zerathia's independence. The empire's ships were massive, armed with energy cannons capable of destroying whole cities. Alarm sirens echoed through the palace as the royal council gathered. Princess Lyria stood beside her mother, her golden eyes wide with both fear and determination. She had never seen a threat like this. The human ambassador, Captain Jason, remained calm as always, his gaze scanning the holographic displays of incoming enemy ships. "They will attack soon," Jason said quietly. "We have limited time to prepare. Humans have strategies for situations like this, but we will need your knowledge, Princess, and the palace's defenses." Lyria clenched her fists. Fear and pride fought inside her. "Do you think humans can face their weapons?" she asked sharply, though part of her wanted to believe it. Jason met her gaze steadily. "Humans survive where others fail. We adapt, we improvise, and we fight with courage. But this is not just human strength. We must combine your knowledge, your people's technology, and our tactics." The Queen nodded. "Then act quickly, every moment counts." Lyria and Jason moved through the palace together, coordinating the defenses. Jason instructed the Zerathian engineers on new power distribution techniques that would strengthen the energy shields. He suggested human battle formations adapted for space, which seemed strange to the palace generals but proved surprisingly effective. Lyria guided him, explaining secret corridors, hidden turrets, and energy conduits only a princess could know. As the Kalthorian fleet drew closer, the tension in the palace grew. The enemy ships unleashed energy probes to test the palace shields. Jason observed the patterns carefully, then issued precise commands. "Redirect power to the upper turrets. Use the lower shields to trap the probes. We will force them into a predictable path." The palace staff scrambled to follow his instructions, and within moments the energy probes were captured and neutralized. Lyria's heart pounded with awe. Jason was calm, confident, and unafraid even under the threat of such powerful weapons. "Humans," she muttered quietly to herself, realizing again that her previous assumptions were wrong. Humans were not weak. They were extraordinary. The Calthorian fleet launched a full assault, firing massive energy beams at the palace defenses. Shields flared with brilliant light, bending under the pressure. Jason remained composed, directing energy flows and adjusting power distribution to maintain stability. Lyria worked beside him, coordinating the palace's internal systems and rerouting resources to support his strategies. One massive Calthorian ship broke through the outer shield. Its energy cannon targeted the central tower, where the royal throne room was located. Lyria froze, fear gripping her, but Jason grabbed her arm firmly. "Stay with me. We can stop this," he said, his calm voice giving her courage. Together, they worked, combining human tactics and Zyrathian technology. Jason's quick thinking anticipated the enemy's next move. He calculated angles, redirected energy, and coordinated counterattacks with precision. Lyria followed his instructions, activating hidden defense mechanisms and relaying commands to the palace staff. The enemy ship fired again, and this time, the palace turrets responded perfectly. The beam was deflected, striking the Calthorian ship itself. Lyria's eyes widened as the massive vessel shook under the impact. The palace had survived thanks to the combined efforts of humans and Zyrathians, but the battle was not over. Smaller Calthorian fighters swarmed toward the palace, trying to exploit gaps in the defenses. Lyria felt her pulse quicken. She had trained for this moment, yet nothing could have prepared her for the chaos of real battle. Jason moved beside, her directing defensive formations, and Lyria realized something important. Humans do not panic. They do not falter. They act. She followed his lead, taking control of palace drones and turrets. She shouted commands, coordinated attacks, and even directed some of the palace staff herself. Together, they turned the tide, neutralizing the swarm with efficiency and courage. Lyria could not deny it anymore. Jason was extraordinary, and humans were capable of things no one had predicted. After hours of fighting, the Calthorian fleet began to retreat. Their weapons were damaged, their formations broken, and their morale shattered. Lyria's body ached, her hands were sore, but her heart soared. They had survived. The palace had survived, and they had done it together. The queen entered the control room, her face proud. "Excellent work, both of you. Humans are underestimated across the galaxy, but today you have shown their true worth." Lyria looked at Jason, her golden eyes shining. I understand now. Humans are not weak. They are incredible." Jason smiled, but his expression remained calm. "We survive, Princess. We endure, and we fight when it matters most. That is what humans do, and we do not stand alone. We work with allies, like you, to face impossible challenges." Lyria nodded, slowly. She realized that she had misjudged humans, and particularly Jason. He was clever, brave, and resourceful, but he was also patient and kind. He inspired those around him, even someone like her, who had been stubborn and proud. That night, the palace celebrated its survival. The energy fields glowed softly, the towers reflected the light of distant stars, and the citizens of Zyrathia cheered for their leaders. Lyria walked through the gardens, reflecting on the day's events. She found Jason standing quietly by a fountain, observing the reflections of the moons in the water. He looked up and smiled as she approached. "You did well today, Princess," he said quietly. "Your knowledge, your courage, and your quick thinking were just as important as any human tactic." Lyria felt a warmth in her chest. I could not have done it alone. You showed me. Humans are capable of more than I thought. You showed me how to see differently." Jason's smile was gentle. "That is what humans do. We endure, we adapt, and we help those around us to see possibilities they may not have considered. Even a princess can learn from a human." Lyria's lips twitched into a small, reluctant smile. She wanted to hide her admiration, but it was impossible. She had fought beside Jason, and she had seen the strength, cleverness, and bravery of humans firsthand. For the first time, Lyria felt that humans were not just worthy of respect, they were worthy of trust. And perhaps, in time, something more than trust. The palace, the princess, and the human ambassador had survived the first true test together. But Lyria knew that the galaxy was vast and threats were endless. Yet, with humans by her side, she felt a new confidence. Humans could face what others could not. Humans could endure when others would falter. And in that moment, Princess Lyria began to see a future she had never imagined, a future where humans were not only allies but essential partners in protecting her people and shaping the galaxy. She looked at Jason, standing calmly beneath the twin moons. She understood one simple truth. Humans were remarkable. They were not only clever, resourceful, and brave, they were unstoppable when they chose to be. The palace of Zerathia had quieted since the last attack. The city glimmered under the twin moons, towers reflecting light on the crystal lakes below. Citizens celebrated their survival, singing songs of courage and hope. But inside the palace, Princess Lyria felt a different kind of turbulence. She had grown accustomed to Captain Jason's presence over the past weeks. He was always calm, always observing, always ready to help. She had resisted, argued, and even tried to dismiss him, but every day had chipped away at her pride. She had seen humans act with courage, intelligence, and selflessness. She had seen them inspire her, guide her, and even challenge her in ways no Zyrathian ever had. And now, she realized that the human ambassador was no longer simply a guest or an ally. He had become someone she could not ignore. The morning air was crisp, and Lyria walked through the palace gardens alone, thinking. Her violet gown trailed lightly across the soft grass, and the alien birds glided silently through the golden light. She remembered the Queen's words. Humans were not to be underestimated, not because of their size or strength, but because of their heart, their mind, and their courage. A soft voice broke her thoughts. Princess. She turned to see Jason approaching, his hands behind his back moving with his usual quiet confidence. He stopped a few feet away, giving her space. The Queen requested that we meet, he said calmly. There is something important she wishes to discuss. Lyria's lips pressed into a thin line. She had expected this conversation, yet she felt her heart quicken. Very well, she said, walking beside him as he led her toward the royal chambers. Inside, Queen Alira awaited them, seated on her throne. Her expression was serene, though her eyes were keen and knowing. Princess, she said, her voice gentle yet firm. You have seen the humans firsthand. You have seen their courage, their intelligence, and their ability to act when others would hesitate. You have fought beside them, and I trust you have learned something important. Lyria nodded slowly, her golden eyes reflecting the morning light. I have learned that humans are remarkable, clever, brave, and capable in ways I could not have imagined. The Queen's gaze softened. Then you understand why this marriage is not simply an arrangement. It is a union of trust, courage, and understanding. It is a bond that will shape the future of Zerathia, and perhaps even the galaxy. Lyria's heart fluttered. She had expected arguments, lectures, or even threats, but her mother's words were different. They were calm, patient, and full of understanding. She realized that the Queen had seen what she had only begun to understand herself, that humans could inspire and lead in ways that transcended species. Jason, standing quietly beside her, looked at her with a small smile. He said nothing, waiting for her to speak. His calm confidence was steadying as it always had been. Lyria took a deep breath. She had spent weeks resisting, arguing, and questioning. Now she understood. She had seen humans act under pressure, survive against impossible odds, and inspire others. And she had seen one human, Jason, stand calmly beside her, guiding, protecting, and teaching without demanding praise. She began, her voice soft, uncertain. She paused, trying to find the right words. I do not want to resist anymore. I see now that humans are not weak. They are extraordinary. And you, Jason, you have shown me that humans can be trusted, respected, and admired. Jason's eyes met hers, calm and understanding. Thank you, Princess. That means more than you know. Humans are often underestimated, but we endure, we adapt, and we act with courage when it is needed. And sometimes we inspire others to see the same. Lyria swallowed, her pride still flickering but her heart clear. I am willing to marry you. Not because I was told, but because I choose to. Because I respect you. Because I want to be with you. Jason's expression softened, a genuine smile spreading across his face. That is all I could ever hope for. Not duty, not obligation, but choice. That is what makes a bond real. Princess. The queen watched them, a small smile on her lips. You have both shown wisdom beyond your years. Humans have a way of teaching even the proudest Zerathians about courage, respect, and honor. This union will be a symbol, not only of strength, but of understanding and hope. Lyria felt a weight lift from her shoulders. She had feared the human, resisted the alliance, and doubted her own judgment. Now she felt clarity, pride, and a quiet happiness. Jason had not only proven himself as a capable human, but had also taught her the value of trust, courage, and humility. Over the following weeks, preparations for the union began. The palace buzzed with activity, but Lyria found herself increasingly looking at Jason, not as a guest or an ambassador, but as someone extraordinary. They trained together, planned defense strategies, and shared quiet moments walking through the gardens discussing the galaxy, humans and Zyrathian customs. Lyria discovered that humans were more adaptable than she had imagined. Jason taught her simple problem-solving techniques, encouraged her to think outside the usual Zyrathian patterns, and inspired her to trust her instincts. Every day, she found herself more intrigued by him, more respectful of his abilities, and more aware of his calm courage. One evening, as the twin moons rose high in the sky, Lyria and Jason walked through the gardens alone. The air was cool, and the crystal trees shimmered in soft light. Lyria stopped and looked at him, her golden eyes reflecting both the moons and her newfound understanding. Jason, she said softly, I want you to know, I respect you and I admire you. Not because you are human, but because you are who you are. Brave, clever, and kind. You have changed my world. Jason's smile was gentle, almost shy. And you, Princess, have shown me that even the proudest and most cautious hearts can learn to trust and understand. You have courage beyond measure, and your people are fortunate to have you. For a long moment, they stood in silence, the garden peaceful around them. Lyria felt warmth in her chest, a mixture of admiration, respect, and something more that she could not name. It was the same feeling she had experienced in battle, in training, and in quiet moments, but now it was stronger. Finally, she spoke, her voice steady. Then, we will face the galaxy together, as allies, as partners, and perhaps as something more. Jason nodded, taking her hand gently. Together, Princess. We will face it all. Together. The queen watched from a distance, quietly proud. She knew that the bond between Lyria and Jason was not born of duty alone, but of understanding, courage, and trust. Humans had once been underestimated, dismissed as weak or simple. But now, one human had proven himself remarkable. And through him, the princess had grown into a leader capable of embracing change, courage, and hope. The ceremony was simple but beautiful, held in the palace gardens beneath the twin moons. Citizens gathered to witness the union, celebrating not just the marriage but the alliance, the courage, and the promise of a new future. Lyria walked beside Jason, her hand in his, her heart steady. She had learned that humans were not only capable, they were extraordinary, and she felt proud to stand with one. As the vows were exchanged, Lyria realized that the galaxy had changed, not because of power or weapons, but because humans had shown what was possible. Courage, intelligence, adaptability, and heart could shape the fate of worlds. And now, she was part of that future, united with someone who had proven that humans were truly exceptional. The celebration continued long into the night. The palace glowed with light and laughter, and the citizens of Zyrathia marveled at the union. They had witnessed courage, wisdom, and human ingenuity firsthand, and they knew that the future held endless possibilities. Lyria looked at Jason, her golden eyes shining. "I once thought humans were weak," she said softly. "Now I know they are remarkable, and so are you." Jason smiled, squeezing her hand. "And you, Princess, are extraordinary. Together there is nothing we cannot face." As the moons reflected on the crystal towers, Lyria understood the truth that had guided her journey. Humans, underestimated by many across the galaxy, were capable of inspiring courage, respect, and even love. And through that strength they could change worlds, not through domination but through heart, cleverness, and endurance. The galaxy had witnessed one human's courage, and Princess Lyria had seen it with her own eyes. And in that moment, the future looked brighter than ever. Humans were not only survivors, they were heroes,